Hi everyone, I thought I'd do a quick video about my latest hobby, which is tropical fish, and I would just sort of entitle this as a first tank really. And I'm also doing this video because there's quite a lot of light on it at the minute, so hopefully you can sort of see the fish in there, and it's crystal clear as well. So I decided to get into the hobby a few weeks ago. My father always had tropical fish when I was a kid. It's something I've always sort of thought about, I suppose, but never really decided to take the plunge and get into it. So anyway, a few weeks ago decided to. Had a look around at a few tanks. This is a Juwel Lido 120, so it's 120 litres. And I think one of the reasons that I liked this tank is because it's quite deep rather than being long and shallow, and I kind of guess I preferred that. I would like to have that. I kind of got an idea of what kind of fish I was going to keep in it and started looking on the internet for ideas. But anyway, so I got this tank, took a little bit of advice. I bought some Substrate, which was like, I can't remember exactly what it was now, but it was like a brown sort of crystallized sort of granular stuff. And I also decided that I would quite like to have like a silvery sand base, and I also decided I wanted live plants. So I got this Substrate home and made a couple of my first major mistakes, and I didn't rinse the Substrate. And if you're starting out with aquariums, that is one of the first biggest things you have to do. Whatever you're going to put in the bottom of your tank, you have to put it in a bucket outside with a hose and keep swirling it around and stirring it up with your hands, and you have to keep doing that until the water is clear all the time. And it may take 10 minutes, it may take half an hour, 3/4 of an hour, whatever, but if that water is not coming clear when you move the Substrate about, it isn't going to stay clear in your tank. I thought I'd rinsed the sand out quite well. I got some sort of silver sand to put in there. did attempt to rinse it out in the sink in the bucket, but I didn't do it for long enough really, and you can't really do it in a sink. You need to do it outside with a hose pipe. Okay, number one rule. I made a complete mess of the tank. The water was cloudy. I set the filter up, set it running, and you could see that it was just swirling around this cloud, and it was never ever gonna settle. Okay, so I guess number two rule is the filter in your tank is not designed to filter out particulate matter which is derived from your Substrate. It's just not that kind of filter. It's to filter out poo left over from your fish and waste food sort of thing, bits of plants which may come off, etc. It's not designed to take out dust which is in the water from your Substrate, so you have to wash your gravel, whatever you're putting in. I ended up with a tank full of mess, so I had to drain all the water off, get all the Substrate out, but then it was all mixed up. It was a mess. I thought, you know what, I'm going to go back to gravel. And the other thing about sand is it's quite hard, even using one of the wide mouth filter cleaners, one of the suction filters, to clean off your bottom of your tank. It's still quite hard to use one of those with sand. So made a bit of a mess, so emptied the tank, emptied the Substrate, rinsed it all out, decided against the silver sand really. It was too fine, going to be too hard to clear, so I did get some gravel. So set my tank up, got everything in it, everything was then starting to look good, the water was clear, etc, etc. The dual filter system works on the principle that everything is in the tank. Okay, so there is a tower in the corner of the tank there, and that's got the filter in it, the heater in it, and the pump. Basically there's like two stacks. There's like these plastic holders, two of them, and they form a stack about this high. I've seen a very interesting video on rearranging the manufacturer's recommendations on the filter, and I'm quite interested in using a biomedia such as like ceramic bobbins, but I'm going to get into that soon. So at the minute my filter is set up as Juwel recommend it. So in the bottom there's a couple of blue sort of coarse sponges. There is a space for other filters you can put in there, such as one that takes phosphates out of the water. You can select other filters if you want to take other things out of the water. The next filter up has got another blue sponge filter in it. It's got a green filter in it, a sponge filter, which Juwel call a nitrax filter, and that is where they sort of perceive that the bacteria grows, which will do away with the ammonia and the nitrate. In actual fact, the whole filter will have this bacteria in it to serve that purpose. The next filter above that is a carbon filter, which takes out some of the nasty chemicals in the water. That has to be changed every so many weeks. Above that is another coarse blue filter, and above that is a fine filter. So that's set up as standard at the moment, but I'm going to redo that, and I'll probably do a video on that. So the first fish I got were some platies, and they were peacock blue Mickey Mouse platies, and I don't know if you can see, they're sort of around here at the minute. They've got a dark patch on the back of their body where the tail fin is, and then they've got two black splodges. If you turn that on, if the fish was on its nose, that outline is supposed to look like Mickey Mouse's head, and when they're lower down in the tank they have a peacock blue sheen on the back. So I got 5 of those as my first fish. I'd made sure everything was clean in the tank. I've got my live plants in there, and this plant here is doing incredible. It's 3 times as big as when I put it in probably 4 or 5 weeks ago. This plant down here is not doing so good. Bit of advice I was given is plants with broad leaves are harder to get going than plants like this one for a beginner. So I got the 5 platies. The tank had been sort of running for about a week. Controversy as to whether to use fish or ammonia to cycle the tank. I tested the water was fine. No, there were no nitrates or nitrites, but then there was no ammonia in there. So anyway, put these guys in. I used tap safe as well, and they seem perfectly happy. I don't think I ever had any what they call bacteria bloom. May have had a couple of times, but only very scarcely detectable. So I had these platies in for a week or 2. They seemed fine. Tested the water. Nitrites and nitrates had gone up a little bit, but they were okay. Everything else was okay. And then I got the Jelly Bean Tetras, which I think are also called Sierra Leone Tetras, but I may be wrong. Tetras are actually part of the piranha family, I'm led to believe, and when you see these guys feed initially, you can well imagine they're part of the piranha family. And then I've just recently added a couple of dwarf gouramis and also some guppies, which are similar in colour, just to add a little bit of red to the tank. I don't think you can see it on the video, but I've got the Juwel automatic feeder, the one with the digital display, and there are some days when I'm not at home, so I just leave that on, leave it going. I was feeding the fish originally twice a day on the minimum setting. Seemed about right. I'm now dropping that down a little bit, but now that I have another 5 fish in, 2 of them bigger, I'm going to put the feeder on its next up setting, but I'm going to try and get it to the correct amount for feeding them once a day. Also, if you get in a Juwel tank, the outlet from the pump, you can get a Venturi for it, which basically introduces micro bubbles into the tank. And I don't know if you can see that on the video, it's there, but it's a little extra sleeve with another elbow that goes on your pump outlet. Then you have the valve sticking out the top of the water, and it basically sucks air in and introduces it into the water flow. And it's very silent, but it adds micro bubbles, which I don't know if you can see them on the video, but there's micro bubbles coming out and coming over here. The action of doing that is to break up the surface tension, increase the surface area, and therefore increase the action of the exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen. So all in all, these gouramis and these guppies have been added. What day are we now? It's Wednesday. Added them on Monday. They seem perfectly happy. The water is crystal clear. So I think that my tank is probably just about as well stocked as it could be. The rocks I got from a shop near Milton Keynes, and they're actually vertically striped rocks, look really beautiful when they're wet in the water, sort of thing. The lighting is what came with the Juwel tank, and everything came with the Juwel tank, but there is one warm white lamp and a daylight lamp, and this plant loves it. Like I say, it's grown 3 times its length in probably as many weeks. Did have a bit of a problem with algae, and that was because I was having the light on all day. I've drastically reduced that, and I tend to just have the light on now when the fish are feeding or when I'm wanting to look at the tank and look at the fish, sort of thing. So the light is on a lot less now during the day. So if you want to know anything about Juwel or these tanks, and I can help you at all with my experience with starting off, if you'd post any questions below, I'll do my best to answer them. I bought a testing kit. I also bought an ammonia testing kit as well. I've been using the water dip tests and keeping a sort of close eye on the water. Have seen different things going up and down. Did a water change on it yesterday, but things have, since my mistake with the substrate, things have been going pretty well. So I'm pretty pleased with how it is just now.